So happy Wednesday. My name is Renee Delgado Riley. Welcome to today's conversation. I'm the current Student Life Director of Assessment and Research at the University of Oregon and current Professional Development Chair for the Student Affairs Assessment Leaders. So on behalf of the SLO Professional Development Committee, I want to thank you for participating in today's structured conversation, and an extra thank you to today's presenter. So we're committed to involve, feature, and represent diverse perspectives and identities within our professional development offerings. And ultimately, we want to meet your professional development needs. So if you all have anything to offer, any ideas for future topics, please let us know and we'd be willing to accommodate you. So for the first time today in a while, we're going to be live tweeting today's structured conversation. We have a hashtag for you, hashtag 6 steps to SLOs. I think I made a minor typo in the email to you all indicating yo. So it's actually 6 steps to SLOs. That'll be our tweet today. Our awesome External Relations Chair, Sarah, is going to be on helping us through that. Please check out the chat. We're going to be engaging in the chat. So if you have any questions, comments, anything that you want to ask of our presenter, please, I'll be monitoring the chat. So please engage that way. So I'd like to introduce Dr. Jarek, Janio, who's been working in higher ed for over 20 years, teaching graduate education courses on critical pedagogy, bilingual education, technology, and instructional design. I also want to mention that he's been super involved in many research projects on student persistence, disability studies, understanding student learning outcomes. In 2014, he has founded and has been coordinating the annual SLO Symposium. He's also founded and been coordinating weekly webinars, which we've been doing our best to share on our website. And Friday SLO Talks, he's been doing since March 2020. So since the pandemic started, he's been really involved with including faculty, policymakers, students, etc. So during these weekly events, he's been leading conversations with professionals from throughout the higher ed spectrum on topics such as assessment of student learning, competency-based education, equity, guided pathways, and the future of higher education. Dr. Janio has been working as an SLO coordinator at Santa Ana Community College since 2015. And without further ado, I want to give him the platform because he has an awesome conversation structured for us today. And so please welcome, let's welcome our presenter today.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, Renee. Wow, great introduction. Really appreciate this. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present. Indeed, you have summarized really the areas of my interest, but just to give you an idea of what I would like to do today is, first of all, actually, I would like to start with an overview of the research project that I did on SLOs a few years back that really helped me shape the discussion of what it means to assess student learning, not only at community colleges, but really throughout higher education, if not education altogether. So this is an important topic, and as you mentioned, we just simply don't talk enough about what it is that our students learn. The literature, employers, public keep demanding answers to questions as to what it is exactly that our students leaving our institutions with, diplomas and certificates notwithstanding, right? Well, what are the skills and competencies? What is it that they can actually do? And if you don't mind, I would like, when I was preparing this presentation, it occurred to me that it would be good to start with the specific outcomes or specific skills, competencies, things that you're going to learn and understand as a result of this discussion. And I have identified 4 of those. You're going to be able to identify, interpret, and answer most commonly asked questions about SLOs. That's going to be the topic of the research project that I'm going to discuss in just a minute. We are going to analyze steps for SLO implementation. We are going to evaluate tenets of competency-based education as the ultimate remedy, for lack of a better expression, or really an educational method that would ensure that students' presence in school is focused on learning, on attainment of specific skills and competencies. And then we are going to identify and evaluate certain future trends or things that are already emerging, and COVID and really our global world are notions that really help us see that we are going somewhere else with this, that the current educational system as we have it is not always necessarily nimble enough or responsive enough to what it is that our students need. So I would like to start with a short description of the research project that I have done 2 years ago, which really started the whole discussion about student learning outcomes and what they really mean in our everyday lives as faculty, but probably more important, everyday life of our students. So what I have done is, with a colleague of mine from West LA College, Mary Jo Epigo, we did set up a study during which we asked questions of SLO coordinators at community colleges in California, and we asked them questions about SLOs. And the starting point for the discussion was, considering that at that time, 2 years ago, we had been talking about SLOs about 15 years in community colleges, if not higher ed everywhere. The question was, okay, after 15, 18 years of those discussions, what types of questions do faculty bring to you as the SLO coordinator on campus? And this was the discussion that the outline that I'm going to share with you will really have to do with answers to the third round of questionnaires. That's just the type of study that we used. We went from very general questions to very specific ones, and we even found answers to those questions. So here they are. The question number one, that's probably most commonly, or at least in our study, came out to be the most commonly asked, was, what is the purpose of SLO assessment? The coordinators gave us answers to these questions, and this is what they said. The purpose of SLO assessment is to improve teaching and learning. As easy and as straightforward as it is, the purpose behind SLO assessment is improvement of teaching and learning. So when you think about it, who out there at community colleges, higher education, four-year universities, who wouldn't want to address this? What about our students? If we are concerned with outcomes for our students' learning outcomes, then why wouldn't we be pursuing the issue of student learning outcomes and assessment of those skills and competencies more vigorously? 92% of the respondents agreed that this is the task that needs to be accomplished. Number two, how often do faculty need to assess student learning outcomes, SLOs? Here's a good question. If student learning outcomes are the overarching concepts that really tell us what it is that students learn in the course, then how often do faculty need to assess SLOs should not really be a question of any kind. Why not? Well, that's because, number one, faculty already assess students as it is. When you think about it, go to anyone's question, look up things on YouTube, how teachers behave in the classrooms. Faculty want to know what students learn all the time. Questions such as, hey, does anyone here have any questions about homework? Do you understand what we just talked about yesterday? Do you have any questions about the assignment? Are there any concepts that I need to clarify? Any other questions? Those formative assessment questions are taking place in classrooms across the world on a daily basis. We assess student understanding of what it is that we are talking about constantly. How often do faculty need to assess SLOs? The problem here is not the assessment, the SLOs. Student learning outcomes have been introduced, and again, it's not only community colleges in California, but pretty much throughout the higher educational spectrum, as an activity that is added on to everything else that faculty are doing, without much of explanation or support. So what happened is back in, let's just say 2005, 2007, 2008, when our accreditors and outside bodies started asking what it is that our students are learning. Could you please share? Could you please tell us? Student learning outcomes were introduced to higher ed pretty much with one statement: please do the SLOs. What are the SLOs? How am I supposed to just do them? I'll check on you next week. And I think this is the beginning of the discussion, because when you think about it, if faculty, which they do, they already have their jobs, they already teach, they grade papers on the weekend, and then someone from outside says, well, please do the SLOs. Then obviously, whatever the notion is, if I'm required to do the job, it's expected of me, then fine, I'll go ahead and do it. But here's the question: how much of it do I need to do? No extra compensation, no support, no really good understanding. Why don't I just diminish the existence of it to the point that it becomes almost invisible? In other words, why would I bother if I don't understand it? So how often do faculty need to assess SLOs? How about zero? Can I do zero? Well, no, because we will be out of compliance. Okay, can I do it once? Sure, whatever once means. Once a semester, once a year, once every 2 years, sky is the limit. How often? That question will remain a valid question, an important question, as long as we consider student learning outcomes as notions that are imposed and somewhat capped on or put on whatever else that is this that we are doing as faculty in the classrooms. The answer to that question was as often as necessary. If we take students' learning outcomes, again, as those statements of competency that students need to take away from the course, just think for a moment. Here's the content of the course, and there are student learning outcomes describing those specific competencies that need to be taken away. All right. So now, as faculty, I would like to know how my students are acquiring those competencies. That's why I am faculty. That's why I am teacher. How often do I need to do this? I really think I would like to know about it all the time. I would like to know every day, every semester, every year. When you think about it, I can't in good faith assess reading in an English course, but not writing. Because this semester, we have agreed we are going to focus on reading only. We are not going to be assessing writing. That's next semester. Okay, for compliance purposes, if this is what we agree to as a body that reacts to accrediting mandate, okay, that's one part of it. But what are we going to say to our students? You can come into class, I'm going to assess your reading, but not your writing. Doesn't sound serious. What happens with SLO assessment data? It is used to improve instruction, as easy as that, just like question 1. We assess student learning outcomes, we get certain data. We really, really, really want to know how well our students read, how well they write, how well they use technology. Can they solve problems in small groups? Can they lead small teams? What about critical thinking? What about problem solving? All these things, all these concepts are right there in everyday classroom activities. What we need to do is start paying attention to them, generate the data, and then improve instruction as we go along. How are SLOs assessed? Sky's the limit. It's faculty's purview. Faculty will know how students can assess what it is that they've learned. That's why we hire faculty. What's the difference between SLOs and grades? And I think that's one of those questions. And as you can see, this is question number 5. So again, in order of in the ranking orders, this was the most commonly asked question number 5. What's the difference between student learning outcomes and grades? And this is what most of the respondents articulated in response. SLOs measure specific outcomes, grades are much broader. Here's the difference. Student learning outcomes as statements of competency of what it is that students can do, can learn, are supposed to acquire in the course. Once they cover the course content, then the grade is going to emerge from the SLO assessment activities. In this case, we still think that grades are much broader because that's what we do. That's what we've done. For all of us, I mean, again, I don't want to make any generalizations that are too far reaching, but when you think about it, we've gone through our educational systems ourselves, and we have witnessed. Little Johnny, please remember your homework is due on Thursday at 4 p.m. And if you're late, 15% of your grade is out the window. Okay, does this activity have anything to do with student learning? It has nothing to do with the course. It could be done from PE, through dance, through photography, philosophy, ethnic studies, math, English, you name it. The question, what does it have to do with learning? And then came one statement that really revealed the gist of the discussion that was really spot on. SLOs measure specific outcomes, grades are much broader, but students care about grades. Why this is the case? Because the whole educational system is based on the system of grading. And there is myriad of books, myriad of literature that tell us that grading is really not the best way to find out anything about student learning. Let me just give you one short example. I mentioned reading and writing, and let's just say that this is a hypothetical English 101 course where one of the competencies has something to do with reading, the other one with writing. We have both of them in the same course. When student leaves the course with a grade of B+, how can you tell to what extent the student acquired one over the other? Can the student read better or write better? Does it matter to us? That's what student learning outcomes assessment is supposed to address. This is what SLOs are supposed to tell us, so that we assess reading, we assess writing as separate competencies, as separate skills. The example that I often use in training is American Sign Language. We have one SLO that has to do with ability to communicate using American Sign Language, and the other SLO has to do with culture of deafness, or understanding of what it means to live in our society with this type of disability. When you think about it, two completely different parts of the same course. They coexist really very, very independently from one another. Yet, a student is graded on both. And again, even if it's grade of A, the question still is, to what extent student has acquired competencies necessary to articulate understanding and skills behind these two concepts. This is, again, the discussion that should be carried on to any subject that's out there. We will have it in math, in physics, in chemistry. There is some part of theory and part of practice when it comes to what it is that students learn. The next question is going to be, okay, what about those students who are doing well in theory because they have already taken courses that prepared them for it? What if a student is doing very well in reading the course material, not very well in lab work? Isn't it something that we would like to know as faculty, as departments, as institutions? What's the difference between outcomes and objectives? Outcomes are the broader aspects, broader competencies in every course. I'll talk later about the content of the course in greater detail. But here's the difference between outcome and objectives boils down to articulation, identification of specific skills and competencies that students are going to be leaving our courses, programs, and institutions versus smaller steps that take them there. So we have broader concept of critical thinking. Smaller step could be observed pretty much anywhere where students develop understanding of what it means to solve problems, to react, to ask questions that will all contribute to the notion of critical thinking. How many SLOs are needed in the course? That was also a very, very, very important question. And again, when we've asked this and we received answers to it, we were just absolutely blown away by the fact that faculty are asking and the fact that the answers are right there. How many SLOs are needed in the course? Well, question should be first, what is the content of the course? When you look at the content of the course, you can identify, you can extract or organize better. I think that's a better way of putting it together, of saying it. We would organize content of the course around concepts, ideas, skills, and competencies that students need to acquire as a result of going through instructional process in the given course. Once we have that, we will know how many SLOs we need. So in other words, there isn't a magic number. It's not 1, 2, or 3. The question about number comes again only from the perspective of having this work imposed on what it is that faculty do. Again, instead of using that approach, we need to look at what it is that constitutes the content of the course so that students, as a result of instruction, leave with specific competencies and skills. That would be the number of those competencies. Program leaders, department chairs, faculty in charge of their courses, everyone should sit around the table, figure it out. English 101, this is what students need to be walking away with, so that when they are successful, we have all the confidence that once the faculty in English 103 receive them, or anywhere else for that matter, students are ready and they can demonstrate the skills that they have attained. There is no set number, and it's up to the faculty. The reason this number is in red is because there was just no consensus. People really didn't know how to respond to this question. How many SLOs are needed in the course? 1, 2, 3, 4. And then again, the most prevalent answer was that there is no set number. So it seems like faculty and their leaders, they know answers to these questions. We just simply don't talk enough about these. Question number 8, how does SLO assessment relate to evaluation of faculty performance and compensation? It was an important question, but there is no relation. It's just, we don't evaluate faculty as a result of SLO assessment. There's just no discussion about that. What are the standards that govern SLO assessment? Again, the standards, assessment, everything is up to faculty. So what happens here is that we are often asking questions about academic freedom, right? That as faculty of record, I can do anything I want in the classroom. And again, I am not here to even address that. I just absolutely agree with this. I don't think that faculty need to be necessarily told, you shall do this because it's Thursday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and it's third week of the semester. You should be doing this. No. That's not what we're after. Competencies and statements and skill statements as identified in course outline of record or a document that governs the content of the course are going to direct what it is that students learn. How faculty get there, that's their purview. They can show movies, YouTube videos, have all kinds of different activities the way they see fit. This is faculty purview. That's why we have professional development. That's why we have activities for teachers. That's why we have all kinds of things that support teachers' teaching and student learning. But ultimately, what faculty do in the classroom is up to them. There is only one thing that matters: what it is that students take away as a result of those activities. And again, the skills and competencies can be assessed, can be showcased, can be documented, and as a result, we can have data. Moving on, how do SLOs, PLOs, and ILOs differ? Again, fairly common question. Student learning outcomes are for courses, program learning outcomes are for programs, institutional learning outcomes are for institutions. And at this point, I think we have come to realize that no matter what the category, the student learning outcome data can only be obtained at the, and again, I'm sorry, it's learning data, can only be obtained at the course level. When it comes to program learning outcome, when I think about it, we are really kind of stuck. We don't really assess student learning at the program level unless there is a capstone, perhaps, assessment that happens at the end of the course, at the end of the given program. But again, it's a classroom embedded activity. The same thing happens with institutional learning outcomes. We assess student learning outcomes, institutional learning outcomes at the course level. We don't ask students, I mean, sure, there's surveys and there's all kinds of things that can happen at the end of the, upon graduation. We could even send to students follow-up surveys. But the question really is of what it is that they have learned, not how well they liked the institution or whether they felt supported. And again, things that have to do with really indirect assessment. And perhaps I could just take a moment here since I mentioned it. Student learning outcomes assessment is really based on what it is that students can do in the classroom as a result of direct assessment. And direct assessment means that I am going to observe as faculty. I am going to see what it is that students can do. What is it that they do in the classroom? And in that process of doing, I can look at student learning outcome for the course. So let's just say I am going to be interested in how well students write three paragraph essay. That would be for the course. For the program, I would like to know that students can put this essay in a context of a longer piece of writing. So this could be a position paper or a research paper. When I think about it later at the institutional level, okay, well, here's the documentation that says, okay, students can write as a result of instruction at our institution. As a result of this research project, and again, this is thanks to, as Rene mentioned, thanks to the conversations I've been having at the SLO Symposium and Friday SLO Talks, I have developed the 6 steps for SLO implementation. It just so happened that there are 6. There could have been probably 4, maybe 7. It depends on how you look at it. But the research project and there are discussions that I've been having with faculty, with their leaders, administrators over the years, from throughout the spectrum of higher education in California and the United States. This is what came to my mind. So first of all, we are going to start with course content analysis. That means that student learning outcomes, those statements of competency or statements of learning, if I were to explain the concept better, will start with what it is that the course is all about. After having taken English 101, Math 101, whatever the course designation is, What it is that students are going to be able to do is the question. Course outline of record already has that information embedded there. It's there. We can just take a look, and skills and competencies are listed there. Here's the difference when it comes to syllabus, and I think I will mention it later as well. But when it comes to development of syllabus, or the document that students are going to see, this is the document that students are going to react to. What matters is that students will be told that this is what they are going to learn. It's completely immaterial or irrelevant what the course is going to cover or introduce students to, or we are going to discuss, we are going to present. None of those things matter. Those could be instructional methods, instructional practices as demonstrated by faculty. But what really matters is what it is that students take away from the course as a result of the interaction with the course content. That's what matters, not what it is that we are going to discuss or cover in the course. Focus really needs to be on what it is that students learn rather than what it is that course offers, even what faculty want to cover in the course. Students need to be informed about this from the very beginning. So I'm glad I remembered the slide better. I already articulated these points. At the end of the analysis of the course subject matter, responsible for the work faculty generate a list of outcomes. And again, that list is not going to be managed or determined by that number. It really doesn't matter. What matters is what's in there that students need to learn. Now, granted, if a department faculty member decides that there's just too much information in this course, there's just too much for students to learn in a semester, then when you think about it, isn't it a nice thing to know that we could bring up to our administrators, department meetings, or whoever else is out there who needs to know that this course just contains way too much information for 16 weeks? What if we come to realize that there's just not enough? Maybe there's just too little. For 16-week course, why we spend time doing this? Maybe this course could take only 6-8 weeks. What about 10 weeks? So these discussions will not take place until student learning outcomes are matched with course content, and this consideration is discussed seriously. As long as faculty teach course content, they are making sure that students are learning skills and competencies as outlined in the course outline of record. I believe that this is probably a very, very profound statement that really summarizes this. That again, we are not going to focus in courses on what it is that faculty are doing, but instead we are going to focus on what it is that students are learning. Step 2, SLO statement design using Bloom's taxonomy of the verbs. I hope by now we are pretty much familiar with the structure. At the bottom of the Bloom's taxonomy, again, this is the skills and competencies are ranked in the visual in the pyramid from least to most cognitively demanding. So remembering and understanding are sort of at the very bottom of the scale. When you think about it, okay, I remember my phone number, I remember my address, I remember what's 3 times 7. That's 21. I remember that. But then when I creep up the scale, what I would like to do is make sure that now when I know what my phone number is, how can I apply this? This is what my kids do. They both have phones, cell phones, and they make Pizza Hut called dominoes, and they let them talk about their orders. That's the application of the knowledge that phone numbers exist when you think about it, right? I mean, I'm not too happy about it, but that's what they do. So this is a piece of information that we can take to a higher level. Ultimately, when you think about it, 3 times 7 equals 21 as a concept. We as teachers would love our students to find ways to apply this in real world situations. As a matter of fact, math teachers and other disciplines as well struggle with that concept. How do I make this relevant? How do I make this meaningful? How do I make my content attractive to students? Not only attractive, I really want students to recycle the concept that I'm teaching. The content needs to be revisited, reshuffled in our brains, in our students' brain, so that at the end, they can create a new activity. So 3 times 7 equals 21. Well, what if one of those digits is missing, right? What if one of the numbers is missing? What if we reverse the order? What if we have number 3 here, number 7 there, and we have baskets and apples and all this? So this is the whole discussion. But again, it needs to come from students. They need to be able to demonstrate this. And in order for them to demonstrate it effectively, there is only one thing that matters in my mind: how those tasks are relevant to students' lives. That statement has really huge implications to our equity discussions. Again, I will spend some time talking about this later. The idea is that as faculty, we really are not there to make our students' lives easier because of COVID. We have, instead of 7 homeworks, I'm going to require only 4. We are still perpetuating the same system that makes students remember, understand, even analyze and create concepts that they couldn't care less about, or they just don't want to. This is what's required. This is for student and the teacher to be in compliance. That's why we do it. But we really need to focus on what it is that students can do with the knowledge they acquired in the course, in their own lives, in their own community, in the world. Step 3, SLO alignment to program and institutional learning outcomes. Alignment to program and institutional learning outcomes matters because skills and competencies acquired by students at the program and institutional levels usually must be in a sequence of courses that constitute a program, right? So students will take 1, 2, 3, 4 classes. As a result, we know students have learned, perhaps even going back to our Bloom's taxonomy pyramid. The beginning courses will focus on remembering and understanding at the lower level, even though please observe that I am not saying here that that's the only focus. As a matter of fact, in every course, in everything we do, everything we teach, as faculty of record, we are responsible for making sure that the skills and competencies that students acquire are relevant to them. They need to know how those things link together so that at the end of the day, they know why they are learning. So even if it's the most basic of concepts that they need to remember, let's just say there are lists of irregular verbs in English that ESL students have to learn, okay? At the end of the day, let's make sure that once students acquire these skills and they know what those verbs are and they can conjugate them, then students are given opportunity to showcase what they have learned in a situation that matters to them. Program learning outcomes may come from a variety of documents that provide specific guidelines from outside of our institutions. And at this point, we could probably have discussions about what it is that our students do once they leave our programs. There are, as we know, national, statewide, international, however, organizations of engineers, astronomers, philosophers, English teachers, whoever. And those bodies, those organizations will probably be very, very, very happy to inform the discussion about what it means to become a poet, what it means to become a philosopher, what it means to become a psychologist. What is the knowledge? What are the skills? What are the competencies that matter, that make a successful professional in the given discipline? Institutional level outcomes need to be aligned with institutions' mission and vision statements. ILOs are usually broader competencies, critical thinking, leadership, problem solving, communication skills. They can be found in subject matter of any discipline and should be of interest to all stakeholders throughout the institution. What matters here is that, again, critical thinking, leadership, problem solving really can be observed only at the course level, because that's when we formally interact with the student in instructional setting. So we can observe that. The beauty of it is, however, is that critical thinking exists, and if it doesn't, it's a problem, I suppose, and we already know, exists in pretty much every discipline that's out there. So that's leadership. So that's problem solving. So again, there is really no reason for us not to assess these skills in courses, just so that the institution knows that critical thinking, leadership, problem solving are skills and competencies that our students take away from them, with them upon graduation. It is important for us to realize that our mission, our vision are not compliance-driven statements that we think we are going to do certain things to our students. What matters is what it is that students take away from them, and then we can look at the mission and statement saying, are we actually doing what we said we would? Can students do these things? Again, the logistical, and put this question to bed, when you think about it, institutional learning outcomes, again, there's let's just say ideas about how often or how many of them to assess. Same question. You don't want to know how well students are doing in critical thinking every semester, every year? What about leadership and problem solving? And again, that's just a question from institutional perspective. Think of what it does to our students. Are we going to say, class 2021, we are going to tell you how well you did in critical thinking? Our compliance, our accreditors don't require us to assess your leadership skills this year. That will be for class of 2022. Problem solving, oh, sorry, buddies. You remember we did that 3 years ago. Not anymore, no, we have to wait 2 more years before we get to it again. So again, the issue here is that institutional learning outcomes are really those concepts that students need to acquire, because all of us in a given institution that's embedded in a very specific local community are after. This is what we want them to learn. It's not something that we just think it's a good idea. No, it really needs to be a campus, community-wide discussion about what it is that matters to our students to become productive citizens, responsible citizens, and really productive leaders, members of the global society. Step 4, direct assessment, rubric design. Student learning outcomes, program learning outcomes, and institutional learning outcomes are demonstrations of what it is that students can do as a result of instruction, right? That is clear. These demonstrations can only be assessed at the course level as a result of direct assessment activities such as presentations, group interactions, or other observations of students' behaviors or products that students generate. So in other words, There is no second guessing of this. There really isn't. Please think for a moment about what it is that drives accountability in our institutions. It's very easy for us to get attendance data. Students come in, they enroll, that's data. Students persist, they go from course to course, that's data. They graduate, that's data. And we collect this data, we hire researchers and research analysts, we buy software that's going to visualize all this data for us. Here's a question. How come this data can be obtained without even talking to students? What about the data that really doesn't say anything, literally nothing, about what it is that students have learned? Only because students persist and they complete courses doesn't mean that they have learned anything. As a matter of fact, at my college a few years back, and that was really way before COVID actually, we did invite our students to tell us, hey guys, what's going on? How do you find our college? And we had this, very nice informal discussion. And one of the students stood up and said in the academic senate, before we register to courses, before we even register, first thing we do is we go to rateyourprofessor.com and we look for people who are the easiest, who are least demanding. Who wants to do extra work unless they have to? And that was one of those moments that really was very, very revealing to me. That faculty, again, when you think about it, we all work very hard. We really do. This is, papers over the weekend. I mean, this is like, Thanksgiving break before the finals, or after, I don't know, just, people are busy. We really do a lot of work. The problem, it seems, is that we really don't know what the outcome of that work is. Because again, what's driving our accountability is attendance, persistence, completion, diploma attainment, not learning, not really the result of what it is that faculty do. Assessment rubric example, this is just, again, if we were to talk about visualization or really documenting of student learning, this is a rubric that tells you on top, we have the Likert scale, performance from very poor to excellent. We have students will be able to use MLA writing style. That's the SLO. We have formatting guidelines, source citation, reading, writing, critical thinking, and technology. Now, when you think about the technology part, then I think, again, it would be faculty responsibility and faculty purview to ensure that when students use MLA writing style, that they do it with available technology tools. So we are going to use Microsoft Word or Google Docs, Google Documents to create assignments. And in the process, the faculty are going to be able to tell how well students do technology. As a matter of fact, critical thinking comes into play right there. How do you enhance? How do you make sure that the tools that are available to you meet the objective, the outcome? Student will be able to use MLA writing style. Please show me. Well, teacher, guess what? I go to Microsoft Word and there it is. I can open a template that's already formatted for MLA writing style. Good for you. How can we enhance it? What do we do now? Here's your reading and your writing. You are going to be reading instructions about how to use the template. You're going to read instructions, how you're going to use MLA. You're going to be reading literature so that you know what to put in an essay or a story or a research project. Step 5, SLO assessment, data analysis. And that's probably the topic that comes back very, very, very often. When you think about it, again, we have our institutional effectiveness meetings, or we have our department meetings, we have our X, Y, and Z meetings. And the data that's presented to us is, oh yes, our students are just not graduating in numbers that are high enough. And then we can identify groups that are doing it or not. And then we are going to say, okay, students from this group, they are just graduating at 65% rate. Well, it's got to go to 72. And even if we pay attention to it, and even if we actually do observe that the following year from 65, we went up to 72, even if we call it a success, that's just fantastic. But we really don't have any data about what it is that students have learned. They completed the course better. They perhaps more of them received certificates, more of them received diplomas. What's there? What is it that they are actually taking away from the institution? So student learning outcome, program learning outcomes, and institutional learning outcomes, just like I demonstrated seconds ago, come as a result of Rubric as a tool. Now, sure, if there are people who think that there are other ways to assess student performance, what it is that they do, then we can certainly have the discussion. I'm not saying that Rubric is the only thing that's there. There's all kinds of ways to use portfolios or small group discussion or student presentation, yet it would be good to have a piece of paper or a document, maybe Excel spreadsheet, that would tell us what it is that students can do, and actually I can actually observe it. So student is here doing their thing, and I am here checking off the boxes. And guess what? They are doing critical thinking, they are using technology, they know how to read, they know how to write. Now, the Likert scale will only help me to identify the shades of that if I'm interested in this. But the focus of this activity is what it is that students do, rather than me as a faculty throwing my hands in the air at the end of the semester. I did everything I could. Those students are just not ready for this rigor. Sorry, I don't know what else. 75% of the classes are going to get C's. That's the outcome of that discussion. So SLO assessment data is going to help us inform the discussions in our department meetings, in our boardrooms. It would be really, really, really nice for us to have visualizations that will tell us, this is how our students think critically. This is how they do reading and writing. This is how they exhibit their leadership skills. Once we learn how to collect the data and how to communicate it, we'll be in good shape. Here's an example. This is English 109. Students will be able to use MLA writing style. Please take a look. This data came from the rubric I presented earlier. Student learning outcomes, program learning outcomes, institutional learning outcomes. On the left-hand side, we have, using MLA writing style, source citation as 2 specific competencies I am interested for students to acquire in this course. When it comes to reading and writing, okay, that could be a program learning outcome. Why not? In our English program, absolutely. In every course, we are very much interested in answer to the question how well our students read and how well they write. Finally, we move to institutional learning outcomes, which is critical thinking and technology. Okay, there we go. And now all of a sudden, we have this beautiful visualization with numbers, which is what we all love to see, because numbers tell us a story. Using writing start, look at this. 12% of the students are doing very poorly in the course. That's a number, that's a population, that's a focus right there. And again, it's not only on course completion, it's not only on making sure that students progress through the course, that they stick around, that they don't skip a course or semester. No. What we are interested in is observing what it is that students learn. So if I know that I have 12% of the students who are not getting the MLA style, then maybe in the department meeting, what I need to do is say things like, okay, this software we should have purchased last year, maybe it's still a good idea. Maybe we need to extend our computer office hours so that students can go in and practice, or maybe we need to hire a TA. See, all of a sudden, our resource allocation request is based on specific need because students demonstrate that they need it, rather than, oh, well, computers are getting old, it's time to replace them. Closing of the assessment loop. As a result of the data analysis, necessary resources need to be requested. Departments act on the data to plan for improvement of both teaching and learning, which is the process I have just described. To address the gaps, interventions having to do with the organization, planning, availability of resources or staffing will need to be implemented. These things, again, need to happen, should be happening as a result of discussion about what it is that students learn. Results of student learning assessment should also be disaggregated to analyze the learning among underrepresented populations. Again, I mentioned that. Once you have student learning outcome assessment data, then you can do, as you know, from all other data discussions, you can do anything you need to do with it to point to the areas of need, to mitigate the gaps, to make sure that our students are more successful learning, acquiring skills and competencies. Finally, in accord with action research guidelines, after instructional interventions are in place, instruction, assessment, and data collection start anew. So the idea here is that once we have done all this work, we need to perform a specific, very profound, meaningful analysis of what it is that students have learned. Once we do that, we identify the gaps, we create the interventions, we purchase the necessary resources, and the process starts all over again. What about the future? I think it's 1:07 at this point. I will be happy to entertain the questions. I do have a few slides about the future. So either way, I'm perfectly okay with that. Would you like me to finish, or please let me know if there is anything that you would like me to address at this point. Does anyone have any questions about what things that I have said so far? And I tell you, the reason I asked that question is because I need to open my internet browser, and here I am ready to go.
And feel free, if you all have questions, if you feel more comfortable typing those in the chat, we'll be monitoring as well. Okay, super. Thank you very much. So yes, certainly you can yeah, ask the questions if you have any. I will be happy to send out the slides. Now, what about the future? The future really is already here. We know this. What happens is that our colleges, institutions of higher education, I believe that one of the bigger problems that we have right now is the decreasing enrollment, right? That overall, because of COVID and everything else that's happening, students are just not showing up in numbers as they used to. And I think that the key to answer to the question is this everything else. So currently, let's just say this is what, July 14th. As a result of COVID or otherwise, a student loses a job. And they would like to do something about it, right? I mean, bills are piling up. I don't have a job. There is car payments. There is family to maintain. I need to do something about it. So students show up at the door of a community college. They talk to a counselor. And that would be, let's just say, 2 weeks from now, when the counselor is available. Then they are going to be told, okay, you need to take general education courses first. You have some gaps here. So you need to take political science, English 101, and there's probably one geography and one physics course. You'll just have to do that. Then maybe biology if you want to be a nurse. Then after 2 years of that, we'll put you in on a waiting list for our nursing program. Okay, I lost a job last week. I need to have a job tomorrow. I just can't afford to live here 2 years without any income. That's the best we can do, however. So now, what is it that's happening out there? Students are hungry for this training. They really need to have skills-based training that's already available. It really is. And I would like to demonstrate some of the examples here. There's things starting with Google,
perhaps, guess what? This is a Google-funded program, job-ready skills you can put to work. If you just observe the top, on the top of the screen here, we have the questions for small businesses, job seekers and students. The program does match people training with potential employers, and there is the career certificates. And then there is free training. When you scroll down, look at this. Get professional level training from Google. No experience necessary. Learn job-ready skills even with no relevant experience. Learn at your own pace. Stand out to employers. Path to in-demand jobs. This is what our students need. Announcing Skillable Share. This I found a couple weeks ago on my Facebook feed, I think, or Twitter. Someone sent it to me. It's an app. Thousands of online classes in your pocket. Then on the other side of the spectrum, if you want to really be serious about what it is that you want to learn, there is the Harvard free online courses for the taking. Look how many there are. This is not accidental. This is how higher education is reacting to what it is that students need right now. The demand for knowledge, for skills, is right this minute. And probably the most revolutionary, if I were to use this phrase, concept I found out about, I don't know, again, a few months ago, is this School 42. And it actually has been funded by a millionaire from France, a guy who is big on coding, computer coding. And he wants students to learn coding without tuition, without teachers, without classes. This is the concept of what he describes as peer-to-peer pedagogy, which means that students are simply supplied with a classroom full of computers. And there is very scary to some, big sign on one of the walls in the classroom. If you have any questions, ask Google. And that's probably the end of the story. So I think that this shift towards competency attainment, student learning, and paying attention to what it is that students take away from our schools, from our institutions, is what's going to be driving our discussion in the near future. And I think I had one more slide about competency-based education, but I know it's 1:15, so I think I will leave it at that. Competency-based education is, again, it's a concept that's pays attention to competency, right? So it calls for really restructuring of classrooms as we know it, for restructuring of workload of faculty, different length of the semester, different transcripts, everything simply because it's based on competency, on what it is that students are learning, not what it is that faculty necessarily do in the classroom. That's my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jarek. Does anyone have any questions, comments? I know for me, something that came up is just the lack of support, at least on my own campus, for faculty in the realm of assessment of SLOs, and the outreach that has happened for our Office and Student Affairs from the faculty side of the house for that support. And I guess, what are some of your thoughts just moving forward in the future of this, how student affairs can better partner with academic affairs to better support SLOs development, assessment within the classroom, but also beyond the classroom?
Right. So I think that, obviously academic affairs and student support services are vital to life of any institution for the benefit of our students. No question about it. It's just that it seems that student support is what's driving the discussion. And the reason this happens is that because we are held accountable to those numbers. We are held accountable to how many students we admit, how many students leave our institutions. We are accountable to GPAs, right? Grade point averages drive pretty much any discussion that's out there. So the problem here is that we are having discussions, again, looking at the data. That's probably the easiest to obtain. As I said earlier, students come in, we have the data. Students persist, we have the data. So what we need to do is learn how to create environment that we are already good at, how to enhance it, not necessarily for better persistence rate, but for better learning. And again, in order for that to happen, we really need to make sure that we have good tools and know-how about what it means to assess student learning and how to go about doing it for the benefit of the students. Again, accountability is not what needs to be driving this. It's more, hey, we are here for you, for our student, for the public that we serve. So whatever it is that we do to make sure that they are successful, well, again, Google and Harvard and others are just kind of like out there, ready to go. Maybe there is some writing on the wall, maybe there is something for us to think about. But obviously, student services and academic affairs need to be working in closer collaboration, and the discussions about student learning within guided pathways and equity need to be taking place in much more profound and well-articulated ways.
Absolutely, thank you. Are there any questions, comments from anyone else? I want to be mindful and inclusive of everyone else here.
All right, so I think on my end, again, I can only add this part that I showed at the end, that really, if we are to focus on learning, we need to be paying attention to student skill to competency attainment, and therefore the discussion about competency-based education. So what happens there is that we all learn, we acquire skills at different rates, for example, right? So we learn what it is that we have to learn, but our knowledge and skills that we already possess certainly help us. And this is this Vygotsky zone of immediate development, right? That we learn everything +1. This is the rate of our learning, that there's certain knowledge that we already have, and there's a concept that we are going to understand quickly because we already are prepared. So what happens here, what needs to be considered here is the role of assessment, that it would be really, really good for us to create an environment where students, again, can come in and not only show that they have completed courses from our institutions, but that they can actually do certain things. And again, as I'm preparing as my thinking about those ideas is evolving, and I'm communicating with people from other institutions, I have been sent emails with really interviews with students who come here from other countries, and their English is not even that good. But as long as they can do the computer thing, whatever it happens to be, they can program in certain language, they get a job. And that's really regardless of what else they can do. So again, employers, when you think about it, are really interested in what it is that students bring to their institutions, instead in terms of ability and skill. When that's just, hypothetical. If I were to go to a department store and talk to an HR manager and say, okay, so I work for a community college, please tell me what kinds of SLOs do you expect our students to bring? Okay, what's the discussion? What about SLOs? Like, who knows about SLOs outside of our group, right? Nobody does. But if I were to bring to the manager a question of skill and competency, then I would probably hear the whole list of things that students need to be able to do. As a matter of fact, that's what goes on resume. So students not always tell their employers, okay, guess what? I took history 2 years ago and my grade was B-. And then I took French and it was A minus, and so forth. Some employers might be interested in this, but really what matters is what it is that students can do. So again, when it comes to our interaction as faculty and institution-wide articulation of institution-wide ideas about learning, we need to make sure that ultimately students are the ones who are going to be acquiring certain skills, and they need to be told about it. They just need to know that as a result of English class, you're going to be able to do this and this and this. Not only that, you were late a couple of times and then, you missed some homework. Therefore, your grade is lower than expected. I think that's an important difference. Okay.
I think that's a great challenge to us to go into the future, thinking about even just translating these skills and translating what students are learning inside and outside the classroom. I think that's a very important piece, and also assessment thereof and telling that story. Very, very good points. So I want to thank you, Jarek, for spending the time with us, sharing your 6 steps in SLO implementation, and we'll be sending more information out through our member listserv with the video recording as well as some of the slides for you all. So thank you all for joining us today. I look forward to our future conversations. Our next session will be on September 15th. More information to come on that, and thank you so much. And also, I'm looking at the chat before we go, and there's definitely a sharing here. We'll definitely share some of that too. And I think that that's actually a really good resource. So thank you, Helen, for sharing that. So I'll make sure I copy that and share that to the listserv as well, so they can see how other people have mapped on things as well. So thank you.
I will save the link. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Well, you all enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you so much for joining us today. You all take care.
Alrighty.
And happy summer.